We're on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Matheson. And we're coming live from my home in Lacombe, Alberta. And we're going to talk about a very serious crime. I'm sure you're following it on a link called Justice for Arlene. And the gal's name is just Arlene Westervelt. Her maiden name is Hennig. And I got involved in this when an uncle got a hold of me and asked me if I would appear at the courthouse in Kelowna. It had been subject of a fair bit of attention and controversy because of the manner that it was handled. And there were 4 different organizations that really messed this up. That's a light comment for me to say that. It was the coroner's office under Lisa Lapointe. It was the Crown Prosecutor's office in Kelowna, British Columbia, all 5 of them. It was the court system itself, and heavily it was the Royal Canadian Mounted Police that were investigating this. I had agreed to, along with a lady that was living in my home at the time on a farm near Enderby, British Columbia, that I would support this issue. And when I found out how badly the Mounted Police had handled this, I like to say that if the Mounted Police want to mess up their own people, that's one thing altogether. But when they want to not do their job properly for civilian people, then if I can help, I'm going to. And that's how we got involved in this. And there was quite a gathering at the courthouse. There was a fair bit of attention that had already come on this, but I not only when I found the circumstances that had happened, and then I learned that a superintendent called Brian Gately was involved and was a really close friend of Alberta Westervelt. And the more I got into this, the more what was being uncovered, what they were trying to say that the superintendent and Alberta Westervelt were just casual friends. They were not. They were very close friends. And the issue started being covered up because of that superintendent. And from there, all 4 departments now were trying to cover up how they mishandled this. This is now currently 8.5 years since Arlene Westervelt so-called fell out of a canoe reaching for a water bottle. This gal was a tremendous swimmer and an athlete. I really, it's a comment. There was no water in her lungs. I'm pushing right up to an autopsy now. And the body was found in about 35, 40 feet of water, 60 feet from the shore. And 25 more feet into the lake. And the dive team from the Royal Canadian Police did a super job. But if her clothes had not caught on some of the rocks on the floor of the lake, they would never have been able to recover her. Is that coincidental that she happened to be that close to 300 to 400 feet of water? Her husband, Alberta Westervelt, had a depth finder, and that was brought forward by the uncle, Don Hennig. And from then on in, this thing just got covered up by those 4 departments I'm talking to you about. I want to say that there has been so many issues that are going on in Canada pertaining to negligent investigations by a lot of these departments. I don't have all the documents that I'd like to have. but the ones I have are pretty scary. And that's including the courthouse. We have today a couple of signs I carry, and I'm going to put this in here because I think it's key. I'm looking at one of them right where I'm sitting. You can see part of it. Our courts and judicial system are a national disgrace. And the key part of that, these are sandwich board signs. You sling them over your shoulder. People much older would recognize them. And the irony of these two signs is I duplicated them when I first wore them 41 years and 9 months ago, stating the same thing. And at that time, the Red Deer Advocate covered it, the Calgary Herald covered it, and the Edmonton Journal covered it. And this April, just passed, I duplicated that awareness walk. I don't call it a protest. And that was on the 15th in Calgary, the 17th in Red Deer, and the 19th in Edmonton. And not one of those newspapers showed up to cover it, yet they were told and they confirmed they would. So what is the difference that they would report this 41 years ago and 9 months, but not today? What's happened to our news media? Okay, there's a real break here. And the local editor from Red Deer assured me that they would cover this. And one of the reporters said, well, the other sign that says remove these experts from our children's lives, he said, that's an accusation, Don. I can't do a photo of this. What is the difference almost 42 years ago that the newspapers, all three of them, covered this in detail? And the comment by the Red Deer Advocate and the Calgary Herald, Edmonton Journal, was they don't have the records. So I gave them the original newspaper coverage. So why could we do it 42 years ago and not today, especially with the technology we have? I just don't understand the fear of our newspapers and our reporters. And I did do that, those awareness walks in Calgary. It's the last few months. And so I'm wanting to point out that as a former police officer, Red Deer had a population of 13,000 people. It's now 114,000. That was in 1963 when I got stationed there. And I'm going to bring in some things that will sort of let you know how and why we've gotten to the point we're at, that it's easier to lie than to tell the truth now. Okay. We don't seem to care about one another. 6,000 people in Canada don't have a family doctor. And it's just all kinds of things that we have just let happen as a society. Okay? Our population currently is 41 million. Excuse me. I could take the entire military, their backup people, the entire police forces. By the way, we usually refer to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police as our national police force, but you need to be aware that there's over 300 other police forces in Canada. And if the Mounted Police are that bad, how bad are the other ones? How are their investigative procedures going on? I have no axe to grind with the Mounted Police. And if you go on my site, wakeupcanada.info, you'll see that what I say in there is I'm trying to save the Mounted Police from themselves. I'm not an angry person, but I sure want some of this stuff straightened out. And when an innocent woman doesn't get a proper investigation, and especially because it was the Mounted Police, I want to know why. Okay? And it's been one series of blocking ever since this happened by the coroner's office, Lisa Lapointe, and the Crown Prosecutor's office, all five of them in Kelowna, and the court system itself. I had made a request when I found out the things that were happening to ask that an outside police force be brought into this. And I'm going to request that again today, because the mounted police aren't going to investigate this properly now. They've just committed too many offenses inside of this. The initial members involved for several weeks were 9 members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And today, I'm going to name these people further. I'm not going to be able to conclude this today as a podcast. To do it properly for the deceased Arlene Westervelt and the family, I'm going to need another 2 full podcasts. And on those podcasts, I'm going to name names, because right now there's over 45 more police officers right across Canada in the highest of ranks that are trying to block this investigation, coming up with excuses. And I think you'll be surprised with the names that I reveal. One of the people that was involved was David Eby. He's currently our premier in British Columbia. And David Eby at the time was the Attorney General. And his second in charge was Peter Juke. And they both knew about this. But what was really outstanding is 2016, 2017, there was over $100 million stolen out of, excuse me, seniors' trust account by their attorneys, by their lawyers, whatever you want to call them, financial consultants, investment counselors. And I believe that $590 million was assessed in fines by these people. And I'm quite sure that only $45,000 to $60,000 is ever paid. So why is there no follow-up on these things? Because there's no follow-ups on things that go wrong in the mounted police either. But as I say, I'm not an angry person. I can't live like that. But I'm sure wanting to bring about some changes because of how bad this country is getting. Right now, as Canadians, we don't even have an identity. That's thanks to most politicians. You know, we have become the laughing stock of the world. And as I said, there's at least 30 million people, after I've removed everybody else that's been involved in the applicable careers that I've mentioned. So what are you 30 million people doing in this country? Okay? I live in a country called Canada that does nothing preparatory. In other words, we wait until something happens and then we do something about it. That's a little late, isn't it? We do nothing preventive when we are aware something bad is happening. And I think what really hurts me personally is that most of us, excuse me, do nothing about anything unless it has already affected us personally. That's rather selfish. And then you wonder why nobody wants to help you. Okay? I would like to say to you that I'm going to say that if you have an extended family, so in other words, you have a daughter-in-law, a son-in-law, and they have children that are of a fairly decent age, they will have more problems from within their extended family than they ever will from a criminal on the street. Digest that for me, please, because I think most of you know what I'm talking about. So why are we turning a blind eye to things like justice for Arlene Westervelt? This was an innocent lady, and please don't believe that she fell out of a canoe because she reached for a water bottle. Berticus Westervelt, Arlene was just getting ready to ask for a divorce from Berticus Westervelt. And I'm going to talk about some evidence that we have found and put together in a binder that we put before the court. This man Westervelt was a very violent individual. I don't think he ever worked. In fact, he bragged that he never had to pay taxes. And again, I'm going to ask for an outside police force to investigate this. The Mounted Police aren't going to do this properly since it really happened. I have documents that show now they really don't want this to come forward. Well, I do. Okay. When police officers can deny an investigation to cover up for an error inside their own police force, and then they don't investigate the Attorney General's department properly. I had gone to the Crown Prosecutor's office in Kelowna to see if I could talk to one out of the 5, and all 5 of them were in the office, and they put it on excuse me, the shoulders of a new employee. I'm guessing she was about 50 years old. And she walked back to see if someone would come forward and talk to me. And not one of them did. And I said to this lady, ma'am, it's not your fault. Okay. You know, if she'd come back with an excuse, or she didn't come back with what they wanted her to say, she would have lost her career. That's what happens to people that come forward to talk about the truth. And while I'm at this, I want to say something that's a little flighty, but the word between means 2 or less. Some of you journalists can get that right. Between means 2 or less. Excuse me. Amongst means 3 or more. Amongst means 3 or more. Try and get that right. And the third one, it does bother me. Damn is not my God's surname. So pick another word, will you? There's lots of them out there. And if I want to talk about the people of Canada, and I'm 82 years of age, so I'm able to say what a young police officer can't. I remember what it used to be like, what happened, what is happening, and what it's like now. And I don't want to denude that young police officer, but he can't do that, and he can't say that. And I there's days I get up in the morning and I'm saying, when is this going to stop for Canadians? When is this going to change? And change will become when more of you people in the public get involved. You don't get a pass on this, believe me. So anyways, after a couple of appearances, after I had asked the court, and why don't you ask Mike Farnworth why he's hiding? And I'm going to name some really high-ranking members of the Mounted Police here, which I laid criminal information over this investigation. That book is right in front of me, right here. These are criminal charges under the Criminal Code of Canada, not under, an orderly room procedure by the Mounted Police, or, gee, we have a code of conduct. That doesn't work. They're never held accountable. The Criminal Code of Canada covers all of us. Everybody that lives in this country, there's a section in there that will apply to them when they break the law or circumvent it or not do their job properly. That's kind of called an obstruction, breach of trust. And I laid 6 informations that are right here under the Criminal Code. And when I got involved with the Crown Prosecutor, Mrs. McCallum, that lady was a real piece of work. And for me to use that phrase, that means that's kind of the end of people I want to talk to. And when I appeared, I stepped into this, and I have been involved in 5 court hearings that are all in camera. So no one can talk about what happened in camera. So I want to explain a little bit of that. The reason cases are in camera, and I might add that when this was happening, a judge could do that, but I'm quite sure 2 months after I left British Columbia, and moved back into Alberta, that I saw a document that was saying it takes 3 judges now in British Columbia. I don't know about the other provinces that can put down a restriction that's in camera, so nobody is allowed in there, and those that are there cannot talk about it publicly. In order to be in camera, mainly we want to protect children. I think we know the reason why, especially sexual or anything that's happened to them. They're minors. They need to be protected. Undercover police officers, those hearings have to be in camera. It protects the life of the person that's working undercover in all police forces. And the third one is for the secrecy of our Canadian government. None of these 3 things apply to this case. Not one of them. So I would like an answer from the judge that's sitting, Clark Burnett, why this thing was put in camera. Okay. I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm a little bit torn between this man. I really like this man. I think he's very sharp. He's very thorough. So what has happened to him that he's trying to block things in this trial to move it forward? I can understand the amount of police in the Crown, but it shouldn't be happening in anybody. We've lost the capacity to be truthful. And when it affects other people's lives, then I want to know why it's happening. When I was in that court hearing, we had several people that flew in that had evidence. And I don't know the procedure Clark Burnett was under, but I don't think it was proper. And they cleared the court. These witnesses had flown at their own expense from parts in Canada and the island to testify. There was nothing before the court that afternoon where they wouldn't have the time to do it. And the judge, Clark Burnett, said, well, we're not doing that today, Mr. Matheson. That's not what I'm going to do. And I said, well, Your Honor, they're here now. I'm now talking about things that I'm not supposed to talk about because it was in camera. So I have to back away from that. I'm under a court order. And if I do, I can be arrested. I can be returned from Alberta to BC. And I'm kind of thinking it's not going to happen. It's nothing I planned. But partway through this hearing, I managed to get the Crown, Mrs. McCallum, removed from this case. And what decided that, when I had said, I want nobody from the Crown Counsel's office out of Kelowna. Well, ironically, Judge Clark Burnett was a federal Crown prosecutor. As I say, I like this man, but he tried to justify that it was different. It wasn't different. They're all in the same office. So why is he even sitting on this trial? And the justice of the peace, I'm going to just make reference to it. I want to make sure I get it right, because I know there's a lot of people hoping I'll get something wrong. And when I go to repeat it a few days later, they're going to say, well, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. And I can't remember all these, but she was a superb young lady. Carla Jackson, she was the senior JP. And I got word that the limitation of time was going to run out on the charge with Westervelt, second-degree murder. And my farm is over an hour away from the courthouse. And I thought, I was traveling over at a speed that would have got my car seized to try and get there while the court was still open. But all the way over, I kept thinking, wait a minute. Criminal first, second-degree murder do not disappear. And if it's left dormant for a while, new evidence will bring it back forward. Well, we have that. But I really broke the law. And when I got there, it was a half an hour after court had closed. And one of the sheriffs advised me that no, there's a member from the courthouse downstairs. And that was Carla Jackson. And she came up and talked to me. I explained what was going on. And she said, well, I'll help you. You have to lay the information, but I'll make sure you have it correct. I can't do that for you. And she spent some time going over it so that they couldn't push it back out and say, well, it's not done properly. It was done to perfection, all of them. And before I forget, shortly after we got into about the fourth hearing, I went to talk to Carla Jackson. I was in the city and I wanted to just say hi to her because how she had helped me to do things properly. And the gal said she doesn't work here anymore. Did she quit on her own, or she was told to leave or be fired? That's an answer I want to hear. And that's usually what happens to a police officer that stands up, or a first responder that says, well, I'm not going along with this. I'm going to talk about it. Your career is over. There's a phrase out there that we say, in order to get along, you've got to go along. And that's what's happening in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police heavily, and probably most professions where there's a career at risk. So my website says it. Wake up, Canada. Okay? It's not Canada that needs to be awake. I have seniors that I socialize with because I am a senior and I'm older than most of them. And they say to me, wow, this is the best country in the world. I have always known it's one of the best countries in the world. It's the people inside it that are the problem. And a lot of that is you, the public. You know, you're getting what you deserve because you've done nothing about this for years and years. And you only do it when it affects you personally. There's a saying that there are three kinds of people in Canada: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those that wonder what happened. Which one are you? And my God, as I understand him, says, I have a reason, a purpose for you in this life. What's your purpose, public? Why are you here? And what are you doing about any of this? Yeah. We are actually getting what we deserve because we're not standing up for other people. The biggest issue for me in my life are the children out there. And I would have to say to you, in line with this, there are 1 million children in good homes crying alone. And by the end of the year, there'll be 1 million more children on the street crying alone. You know, you as adults, you want to go out, one another, go ahead. Leave your children out of it. And I'm addressing this to teachers. The word is teach. Teach those children. You're not their parents, so stay out of those decisions. You're making a mess of our educational system by wanting children to do what you think they should do. I'm not going to get deep into that one because it's a real bad can of worms. Okay, we went further now. There was court settings, and again, people showed up. The sheriff, the representative inside the court, said, we got to clear the court. Judge Burnett himself said, everybody out of the courtroom. So what is going on in these courts when it's not a requirement that it should be cleared? There were things said in that courtroom to me by the judge, and again, I can't say them, or they're probably going to arrest me here in Lacombe, Alberta, and whistle me back to BC. But something happened later that I really believe that that's not going to happen. But did I plan this? The hell I did. Okay. That's about the only profanity I use is the word hell. I say it a lot sometimes. It's a place. Okay. And I've been there and I'm on my way back. And it surprised me the number of people I see going the other way today. My age allows me to do that. Okay, my age also allows me to remember what it used to be like. So why can't we get some of this back? Because there's not enough of you out there that care to do this. When as we went into some of these no contact, nobody can appear in court unless, so a lot of times there was just merely the sheriff, the Crown prosecutor, the judge, Clark Burnett, three of us. So why were the things that I wanted to bring forward about shut down? There's a binder right here. I'm not going to look at it because it distracts me. There's 22 witnesses on here, and many of the Mounted Police didn't even want to interview. Why not? Because they would have found out there's evidence there that they messed up and messed up bad. Mess is a polite word, but they didn't do their jobs. That's criminal conduct. Oh, but that's okay, Don. We'll look after him. We got a code of conduct. Code of conduct does nothing. You people have been given a bag of whatever you want to call it to believe that the Mounted Police discipline their own. They don't. Okay? There are Mounted Police officers today that have been suspended for assault with bodily harm, violence. I mean, you think they've been disciplined and they're not there anymore? They're in different detachments in a different location. They are so short-handed right now. They're taking, well, when my brother Bob joined, they were taking 1 out of 55 applicants. And when I joined, they were taking, I understand, 1 out of 32, 33. And now they're taking the bottom out of the barrel. Okay. The most corrupt organization in the world is the United Nations. Okay. Why do we even go there? And the most corrupt organization is Canada. It is not Hell's Angels. Hell's Angels is a business. So they don't want the public to know what they're doing. Excuse me. We all know what they're doing. Okay. The most corrupt organization in Canada is the Association of Chiefs of Police. I'm going to say that again. The most corrupt organization in Canada is the Association of Chiefs of Police. There's a member called Jim Chu from Vancouver, who about 1.5 years ago came forward and said, we can't even fire bad cops. And he hit the nail right on the head. Okay. So while we're in this courtroom, I'm watching a lady come out of the courtroom doors when they have been locked. Nobody else is going in right now. I couldn't go in. They were locked. So I wondered, because we were about 5 minutes over, that can happen. Okay. I'm not worried about the 5 or 10 minutes the doors didn't open. But the Crown prosecutor was sitting inside that courtroom. So she came through it the same way the judge comes through it. You think there isn't a breach of trust there? So when I brought it forward, we hadn't started court yet. I brought it forward before Judge Burnett. I wanted clarification on it. So the competence of not being able to talk about it did not apply right then to me. And I said, how does that happen? Court had not opened yet. And he said, oh, well, Don, she had to have a shower. No, he didn't say Don. He said, Mr. Matheson. Oh, she had to have a shower. The lady lives in town. What do you mean she had to have a shower? Well, a sheriff escorted her to and from the shower. And that's when I thought, oh, what a pile of nonsense he's trying to say to me. Okay. I don't display that because the mood will shift with what I talk. I didn't buy it for a second, and he knew I didn't buy it. Okay. And finally, she was removed. But her conduct in there was to cover it up. She wasn't interested in prosecuting anything or getting evidence. And this binder has 22 witnesses' names, which the Royal Canadian Mounted Police never touched. And they're really key to what happened. There's probably 6 of them that speak about the violent nature and incidents when it happened. Was trying to say to Clark Burnett, Your Honor, hypothetically, let's just say you have a sister. I said hypothetically because he looked at me a little strange. I don't default him for that. And he said, okay, I'll go with that. And now the rest is in camera. And it had to do with violence of someone being punched in the face and jumping out of the car, scooting up a hill, grabbed her purse, and Bert Westervelt was going to go after her. None of that evidence has been before this court. None of it. Because the Mounted Police did not investigate it. And now they want this binder not to come forward. And a lovely young lady called Heather Gray, a former Regina City police officer, helped me to put this together. And the people that I interviewed was a result of the family under Debbie Henning and some of those other people that gave me these names. So again, maybe the court or the ranks of the Mounted Police should ask why these witnesses that were key to this murder were not interviewed. And I guess I could go modern right now and say, well, why wasn't Justin Trudeau interviewed on the SNC Lavalin affair when he dumped Jody Wilson-Raybould and her associate Minister of Health? There is so much cover-up going on in our police force, but there's no discipline. There's no accountability. The 2 key words that the Mounted Police use, and they use them over and over, is deny, deny, deny. Cover up, cover up, cover up. Okay? Polish the badge. Don't tarnish it. Well, all their badges are electroplated now. They don't have to polish them. They stay brilliant all the time. I'm going to a comparison, excuse me, that I have in how we've got to where we're at. That sign was on our farm, 12 by 24 feet, 31 feet in the air, right along 97B Highway. Ironically, I've had people that own cottages in Mirror Lake say, was that your sign, Don? And it says what I'm going to read out to you on the cards I got, because there's a couple more lines that have been added to it. And I had Mounted Police stop, taking photos of it, didn't want to come in and talk about it. All kinds of them. 3 at one time, their police cars were parked taking pictures. So why didn't they want to do anything about this? The same as what's going on with Justice for Arlene. And 5 young police officers, well, one was 47 years of age, but they were young in service, came to my farm, not together, one at a time, not in a police car, not in uniform. And I usually ask when I'm talking to a member, because a regimental number, or it gives me a time frame and when I know he served, or perhaps the knowledge he should have. 3 were women, 2 were men. The one man, as I said, was 47, 49, which fine, he can still serve. But every one of them, as I said, no one had more than 27 months of service. It's a comment of where the Mounted Police have been for a long time. It's not the iconic Northwest Mounted Police that you remember. In fact, our force today is riding on the backs of the history of the iconic memory of the Northwest Mounted Police, Royal Northwest Mounted Police. I do not denude any member's service or what he's doing. I've never said all police officers, all judges, all lawyers, all politicians. but just far too many of them. It's not a few rotten apples anymore. It's one hell of a pile of them. Cover up, cover up, cover up. But all these 5 young service police officers, 3 women and 2 men, really said pretty much what they all said. And every one of them said to me, if I knew what I joined, what I know now, I would never have joined this outfit. Doesn't that kind of sum it up? And I had long been retired by that when I was in Enderby. We're not getting better, Canadians. We're getting worse. And if I was to ask a civilian, or if a civilian was wanting to walk into a police station today, any police station, and try and file a complaint or give a clue or a lead, something that happened, there's 100% chances that that police officer is going to take your information, your complaint, and investigate it properly. And there's really good chances that there's criminal charges need to be laid, they will be laid. But if you walk into any police station and file a complaint against a police officer, you might as well forget everything I just said about it being investigated properly. There's a sign on the wall right up here behind me. It's 10 feet long. The lettering is about 10 inches high. It's the colors of the Mounted Police colors. And it says, I support the police, but only the good ones. And I do. I don't do protests. They're loud, crude. But the volume of people that have not been heard in this case to cover up the errors and mistakes that those 5 different departments I said at the beginning. Debbie Henning had made a call to a detachment east of Kelowna, Lake Country. And she was trying to say that we really believe that the husband has murdered my sister. The reply she got from a male police officer was, lady, excuse me, do you know how many people drown in the Okanagan every summer? What a hell of a comment that a policeman would say when he doesn't even know anything about what she's just about to tell him. A little further on, another lady, a woman this time, a young lady, pretty much said the same thing. Okay? That, they weren't wearing life jackets. She wasn't even there. She didn't even know anything about the scene. Why are these Mounties saying these things, or any police officer for that matter, when they know nothing about the issue? That's when it took off bad right off the bat. Okay. That led it in a direction, oh, well, gee, this isn't a murder. It's a drowning. And none of these people talking had any knowledge of really what happened. What's happened to the caliber and quality of our police officers? This is a massive cover-up because of the mistakes made early. And it's, policemen drive a car that has a reverse in it. It can back up if it gets stuck in the mud. But when they say something wrong, they don't have a backup word. They just keep going forward with what they just said to you. That's not very humble. And that doesn't help any systems or circumstances or relations with the Canadian public. I remember when we could trust police officers. Okay? I didn't work for good police officers. I worked with great police officers during my service. They don't exist anymore. Okay? The ones that are out there trying to do their job properly, their career, are going to have to go along. And if they change in how the force wants them to do things, their careers are over. And I'm not even talking about sexual violence towards our female members. And that's exactly what happened to Arlene Westervelt. It was violent in that canoe. And from then on in, it got covered up. What's my time, Jude?
45 minutes in.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Okay.
We're on that topic. Let's just move this. Yeah, we are serious. Sorry.
Yeah, you got to get over a lip underneath there. Is that not? That's working, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm just gonna move it.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. Is that better? No. Wait a second.
That'll do it.
Sorry. I think that's better.
That's good. Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear that.
Yeah.
So we're still live, Jude?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there were another three. The first two judges I appeared before were both women, and they had done nothing wrong in this issue. COVID had come in. I think it was disappearing. That's another thing I need to talk about. COVID did nothing wrong. It's the way we didn't handle it. But anyways, there were, I think, 15 people to appear in court at 2:00 in the afternoon, and they closed at 4. And one man had 3 charges. And the circumstances on one of his charges, he could do time. So I would be disappointed if that judge didn't take all the time in the world to listen to what he had to say, so he didn't end up in custody in jail doing time. But 3 of us didn't get a hearing that day. So I drove the 100+ miles back. It happened the second time. Same circumstances, another female judge. It wasn't her fault. But there were 8 courtrooms in that courthouse, and only 2 were open. So how does everybody else get to be heard when it's crammed in? And I can compare that to today. Our court system, the sandwich board signs are right here beside me. Our courts and our judicial system are a national disgrace. They're not there to serve the people anymore because justice isn't being done for very few people in that courtroom. There is no accountability. I could refer to the court system today, especially regarding justice for Arlene, how long this is being taken to even go past the first set of hearings. And I'm going to ask for an entire outside police force. If we want justice for Arlene, that's got to happen. It needs to be taken out of the hands of the mounted police. It was one of their guys that was instrumental in causing the problem. Currently, right now in British Columbia, there's an Ontario Provincial Police investigation going on, Operation Eastbourne, under similar things that have happened. And if the systems were doing things properly, we wouldn't need outside police forces. And again, until it affects you, you're not going to do anything about this. We have
one of your viewers said, "How can I get involved as a volunteer to his cause?"
Well, I think you can go up on the site called Justice for Arlene. You can also go up on my site called wakeupcanada.info. It doesn't hide anything. It talks about it. Well, I just showed you that I don't have any shoes on right now. It's kind of warm in here. So I took them off because my feet are under the table. Okay. I really don't want to be here. Okay. But the amount of documents I have that I amassed since roughly when I saw the mantelpiece going sideways in 68. It goes a long ways back. I can't sit back and say, well, keep me out of it like everybody else is doing. I didn't cause it. I didn't create it. No, my sign says your silence is deafening. And I say to you now, your silence is consent to what's happening. I want to go back into justice for Arlene and stay with what happened in that courtroom. But I'm rather handicapped because if I start talking about conversation in the court, I can be arrested. I have a document right here that I didn't agree with what the presiding judge was saying and doing. He didn't have the authority to do that. And the reason he was able to do it because it was in camera. If there had been public that could hear this and other people, he wouldn't have said some of the things he said. And again, I have a conflict here because I like this man. I really thought he was thorough. So why is he doing this now? Okay. Because the system's messed up. He now is going to be a fixer to make sure this doesn't get to a trial. Anyways, this document says this wasn't in camera. I had to appear in court to go back to BC to get this document. And I had to appear before the presiding judge, Clark Burnett. It says Kelowna, March 23rd, 2023, in the matter of a process application filed by Donald Malcolm Dukes Matheson. The file number is on there. You can probably look it up. 4801-95916-1. All these criminal informations have numbers that align with this. It says order in big letters before the Honorable Judge C. Burnett, Thursday, the 23rd day of March, 2023. The application I'm applying for is a transcript of what happened in that courtroom. And everybody said, Don, you're not going to get this. Well, we got it. And when I went before Judge Burnett, he said, why do you want this, Mr. Matheson? And we were not in camera at the time. I was the only person in that courtroom that day. And I said, because you said things that you weren't allowed to say to me. You cut down a witness list, this book, that had critical information about this investigation. He cut it down from 22 to 12. I can't talk about the conversation because that was in camera as to what went back and forth between him and I. But he did finally agree on one thing, and he kind of got a little embarrassed with it because I had made reference to his sister being in this particular car. And one of the witnesses, they got punched in the face, grabbed her purse, and bailed out of the car. Verticus Westervelt was driving that car. And that's not critical information. Anyways, I got the transcript. I got the order to get the transcript. The order is here in my hand. I don't like looking away from you. I want to read it precise. It's an invoice from JC Word Assist Limited. Ordering party, delivering memo. The files are 95915, 95916, 96367. And they're expensive. They're not cheap. But it allows me to say what happened. But the order says, Upon this application coming on for hearing before me this date, March 23rd, 2023, and upon hearing Jessica Saras, counsel for the Crown, this is the new Crown counsel they brought in when I asked that McCallum, former Crown prosecutor, be removed because of a conflict of interest. And Donald Malcolm Dukes Matheson appearing on his own behalf, and upon hearing the submissions made this date, this was a special application I came back to British Columbia to get. The court orders that a transcript of the proceedings held in camera from August 11th, 2022 are to be released to Mr. Matheson on the conditions that Mr. Matheson shall not, A, make any additional copies of the transcript, B, show or provide the transcript to anyone, C, photograph, photocopy, or scan any, reproduce in any other fashion the transcript, and D, shall not disseminate any fashion to anyone. What's the purpose of my getting that? If I can't bring it forward to show what happened in that courtroom. And again, I want a reason given to me why this whole thing is in camera. The three main reasons I said that why things are in camera doesn't apply to this. And while going through some old documents that were on this file, I found a license plate with a vehicle attached to it. And that license plate belonged to Laberticus Westervelt. And it was held and seized by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police because of a vehicle check in which it was loaded with marijuana. Why are they hiding this? Why are the police not wanting to come forward and being honest? Okay. If I had not been a former member of the Mounted Police, I would never have been able to navigate this. I would never have picked up things that were happening in court that should not be happening. There's a thing called due process of law, and justice delayed is justice denied. It has been 8.5 years for the Henning family. Painful years. Well, Laberticus Westervelt is out there doing his thing. Okay? Is that called justice? Of course it's not. I'm not done with this. I've only started to just begin. And what happened after that, when they recovered the body, as I said, it was in 30 feet of water, 60 feet from shore, and her clothes had caught on the bottom. And within 60 feet, there was nothing that would have caught her any further, and she'd have dropped into close to 400 feet of water. Do you think in the Okanagan that Laberticus Westervelt knew exactly that was there? Or is that just a coincidence? There were witnesses that wanted to come forward that were never interviewed. I've already said that. So why are the police not interviewing these people? And a real bombshell, the two police officers that did the original investigation thoroughly, no one has known about this. Okay. Call you back. We're on live. These two investigative police officers, I question even their credibility anymore. But I think you know how I feel about the force anyway. But you will never hear me say all police officers. I've already said that. They're not. But right now, the members that are trying to do right by you Canadian citizens, they're having one hell of a time being able to do it. because of their own system. On the night that they found Arlene's body, they recovered it. The two Mounted Police dive team, they indicated that 25, 30 more feet, and they would never have been able to recover it. And again, as I say, was that a coincidence? Don Henning had told me that Bert Westervelt held a dive monitor, a depth finder. He knew where that body was going over. And there was no tests done on the canoe. When I actually saw a photo of it, I could have done a dance in that canoe without it tipping over. There are so many things not done properly by the mounted police, and they are the persons that started this all off sad. And then the coroner got into it and did that wrong. Lisa Lapointe, it wasn't even medically qualified. And from then, the Crown prosecutors. And David Eby, of all people, can you imagine Attorney General involved in something like this? Okay. And these informations disappeared quickly because David Eby knew he was running for premier, and a premier can't run. Most politicians can't run when there's a criminal offense being hung over their head. They have to get cleared of it first. And if you watch him today, you can understand why he shouldn't be there. Okay. You think he's going to correct anything? Of course he's not. The mounted police are going to come forward and say, oh, sorry, but we messed up. You damn right you messed up. But like I said, it's in their cars to back up, but it's not in their mouth. Okay. They just push forward and just say, oh, well. All you got to do is look what's happening with our commissioner right now in Ottawa. I'm embarrassed when I watch that man. So when are we going to hold us accountable? When are we going to get justice for Arlene? There were too many things that have gone on in this case. The family that came forward and asked for another investigation. Anyways, I was talking about a recording of the two original investigators. They don't know this. Their own force doesn't know it. And on a luncheon where Debbie, a friend, and a sister-in-law were having dinner with them. And the corporal just kiddingly said, are we recorded? Debbie and her family didn't have to tell them they were being recorded. That's the law today. And they sort of chuckled and said no. And then Deb asked the two investigative members of the force, are we being recorded? And they kind of laughed about it. There are 50-some pages of that recording that's been transcribed properly as to who was saying what and when. And you think they didn't think that Bert Westervelt killed his own wife? That transcript is going over to an individual that's got a civil action now. Will it make a difference on his? No, because I'm asking for another investigation. Okay, and maybe you, the public, if you want to help, is ask the public, ask the Crown prosecutor, ask the Attorney General, ask the Attorney General of Canada why he hasn't stepped into this and is dealing with the attorneys general in every province, because that's an ugly mess. Right? He has a duty to make these men accountable, and those men have a duty to the public to do things properly. The day that the dive team recovered Arlene's body, Bert Westervelt had been taken down to the police station, and he was released into the custody, physically, of Don Henning. The uncle. And Brian Gately showed up at the home. This superintendent that they weren't good friends? You bet they were. They were trafficking at the same time. So who advised him of that? And they're not close friends. Why did he show up at the home that same day? They have to get their alibi together. Liberticus Westervelt isn't smart enough to do that his own, but that superintendent sure was. I don't think Liberticus Westervelt could even plan a murder properly, but somebody could tell him how to do it. All he has to do is push, and over she goes. Arlene Westervelt was fighting for her life alongside of that canoe. And from then on in, it's gone to major cover-ups. And you might want to ask the Mounted Police why this is still sitting dormant, or ask the Crown. Okay? Why this thing is just sitting, going nowhere. You might want to interview some of the family members that know personally how this got covered up. The Mounted Police stayed away from that. It divided a couple of families. Okay? Nobody interviewed some of these people that can tell you exactly what went on in that family. You might want to ask why Liberticus Westervelt had so many fires, how many buildings burned down, because he had a relative that was a fire marshal, an inspector. This guy is not an innocent person. And if the Mounted Police do their job, or an outside police force comes in and does it, this man will do time. And it's where he belongs. Okay? I have a bit of a throat that a few more minutes. I'd like to go a little longer, but I want to do 2 more podcasts pertaining to this within the week. And a couple of days back, I lost it. I couldn't even talk. And I know it's coming back again. I apologize for that. I wanted to do at least an hour and a half today. And what happens, it has something to do with COVID. It's in my right ear as well. I'm one of the 6 million that don't have a family doctor. I've had one all my life. And in Alberta, I can't get one. But a week ago, a doctor called me to tell me that there was an opening in a clinic in West Park. I now have a family doctor. So now I'm going to be able to get looked after so I don't lose this totally. And that's another disgrace in this country. Yeah. But anyways, I want to dwell directly on justice for Arlene in the next 2 podcasts. Yeah. And the reason I say this about my throat, I don't really have a pain, but when it goes, I just make sounds like a breathing sound. I don't want it to happen again. And what it ends up, if I can do a little light brevity here, this isn't the place to do jokes, but my voice will then go to, oh, I'm just like Christy Freeland. Gee whiz, we can do this. And that's the last person's voice that I want to imitate or be talking about it. I have only touched the surface of documents I hold pertaining to this, and they are not in camera. Okay? I just needed to do something to let the family know that this thing didn't go away. The Mounted Police are hoping it goes away, and so is the coroner, the Crown. Okay? And if you people want to help in some way, I just got through saying to you, then demand from the coroner's office. Good luck with that, because they're not going to do anything for you. And then demand from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, I really don't want them to investigate this. So find out why we can't bring an outside police force in. I've tried. Like Mike Farnsworth. Whoa. Keep me out of it. He did this a short while ago over a very serious crime that involved Native girls. He was going to say he was going to bring in an outside police force. He sat down, and for 2.5 years, he's done nothing. This is something that has to stay covered up because of the people involved. And do I need your help, public? The Henning family needs your help. They need you to put enough pressure on systems that are not working to help. And I'll give the balance of the other documents in my next podcast. I'm not going to go until I lose this. It's not an excuse, it's a reason. I need this voice. Okay? And you're looking at an old guy with a pink beard and a pink mustache, and you're kind of wondering what that's all about. Well, I'm going to be clear about this one. It's an anti-bullying beard for children. Pink shirt day in school. I think most of you know about that. And you're doing nothing about that either. Okay, I have been wearing this beard for 7 years in the color it's in right now. And in the first 5 months I was wearing it, I have not taken it off. There's a hairdresser that taught me how to do it myself. It's a type of dye on there that'll burn your skin if you don't do it properly. But I have been called an effing faggot 50 times 7 years ago. And I was never called that as a police officer. So if you want to find out who Don Matheson is, please go up on wakeupcanada.info. You will see some of this. You will probably see me in camera. It's not about me. It's about the issues I'm trying to talk about. And they involve you. And you will probably see a lot of the coverage that the news people covered. Get up to pace where we're now in the courtroom. Please. Go on the documents on Justice for Arlene. Find out what happened by the news media and why they're not covering it or keeping it covered. And I will fill you in on the rest. And you're not going to like it. But somebody has to do it. Okay? I have a good friend of mine that he's not well. He was a former staff sergeant, super good guy. And it wouldn't matter what we do. We will never not be friends. Okay? And a short while ago, he said to me, John, do you know how long you've been at these issues? I do. And he said, well, why do you keep doing it, Don? I didn't have another answer. I said, because you're not. And he laughed and he said, well, that's not fair, Don. I said, yeah, but it's honest, isn't it? And I want to go to this crest I have. It's a mounted police crest. It's our badge. Okay. I got a letter. I got a phone call first from a superintendent of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Ottawa. And he said, you have to take that off your card. I want to explain the card to you before I go. Excuse me. And he said, that's the property of Walt Disney. I said, well, what are you talking about? We're on a phone. Well, he said, if you don't take it down in 18 days, we're going to take you to court. He owns the right to that badge. Well, when Walt Disney was doing some selling of stuffed dolls and everything else, he was doing it for the PR for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police out of Depot Division. And he did have it, but not the exclusive right. So I was going to tape it off. And I thought, no, wait a minute. I'm going to find out what this is all about. So when I got a nice letter from him. When it's high enough a rank in the Mounted Police in Ottawa, it's all in gold writing. Wow. So I said to him, Superintendent, it's not surprising. You're kind of a Mickey Mouse outfit anyways anymore. He didn't like that. But I think he had to agree with it. So those are intimidation levels. If they want to stop you from putting up a sign, they're going to do everything they can to stop it. And that's what happened to my farm sign. and more because I was involved with this with Justice for Arlene at the time. And in that courtroom, I'm going to say this now because I have a lot to say in the next one. It was in camera. There was the Crown prosecutor, the new one I just said who she is, Jessica Saris, Judge Clark Burnett, and myself. It's in camera. But I get a call from K Division, which is Alberta, from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, saying that they just got a file on me. They came out of this courtroom. And the Staff Sergeant Zakuluk said to Don to me, they're going to try and disgrace you from doing what you're doing in this trial that's in Kelowna. How the hell did that happen? I have nothing to hide on my jacket. In fact, I would say to any one of you now, if you want to find out all my history in the force, I give you permission right now to get my entire file. But good luck with that, because I can't even get it. And that when you read it, you'll find out how the force does things, doesn't do it properly. But anyways, the whole idea of it going over, and because all my service was in Alberta, K Division. Now, British Columbia is E Division, Saskatchewan is F, Manitoba is D Division, and I'll give you the other things in the next podcast. However, how did that get out of a courtroom when there was only 3 of us there? And I know I didn't do it, and I know Clark Burnett didn't do it either. So guess who had left? Crown prosecutor. And the whole idea was to find something on me so they could discredit what I'm doing in another case. That's how far the Mounted Police will go. Okay. And I think they had a few more people involved in that as well. And I intend to deal with that. So they're going to do everything they can to make sure the other documents I have and the information I want to put forward for the Henning family. And I think it will turn this around. I'm not going to hold my breath, I can tell you that. But I will be demanding an outside police force. It can happen, and it's supposed to happen when there's a conflict of interest by an investigating party. So I don't know where you are, what you're doing, people, but I have a salutation. I'm going to read this card for you first. It's what I hand out to anybody. There's a set of weigh scales, justice scales. You know, the lady that holds them up. On one corner, the badge, our badge, is on the opposite corner. And the bottom it's the Canadian flag in 2 places. And the card says DMD Don Matheson, former RCMP officer. And again, it's a conversation when people read that. It's a bit of an in for you. I'm not proud of that outfit anymore. I'll tell anybody that. Website, wakeupcanada.info. Email, dmd.matheson16@gmail.com. Facebook, Wake Up Canada. Phone, 250-515-1060. And on the back of that card, it says, Wake Up Canada, your silence is deafening. It says our courts, our judicial system are a national disgrace. Divorce, custody, access, the legal destruction of the family. Lawyers, bottom feeders, blood-sucking leeches. No more non-disclosure agreements, in brackets, NDA. Real name, gag orders used to cover up truth, not expose it. Justice for 7,000 female police officers. All lives matter. We all bleed red. R, rotten from the bottom up. C, corrupt from the top down, cover-ups. M, manipulative, high rates of suicide, PTSD, and sexual harassment. P, perfect servants, puppets of the provincial and federal governments. And those are true. Like I said, I didn't say all of them. I needed to get an introduction in this so the Henning family can realize that this didn't just go away. I'm the guy that was in that courtroom, that was allowed in that courtroom because I was doing part of the prosecution. And something else I want to say, I was advised that I would pay all the costs to the witnesses, airfare or whatever, accommodations, and that I would have to prosecute this case. I just shook my head, and I'm sorry, but I said to him, what the hell is going on? So I will say to you now, which I say to a lot of people, good health to you and yours in the interim. Stay safe, stay well. That's not a request, that's an order. Okay, Jude, my voice is really dropping here. I'll just, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're done? Okay.
I would like to